This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Before I start talking anything sports, I want to remind you all to subscribe to the podcast so you always get those alerts and notifications on your phone, on your laptop, on your watch, on whatever device you might be listening to this on. And again, you get those alerts and notifications so you can know when we drop a new episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Again, you want to subscribe to the podcast on whatever device you are listening to this episode on, so you can be one of the first people to get those alerts and notifications. And again, you can be the first person to listen to a new episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast when we release one here at the GSMC Sports Podcast team. Again, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. We would really appreciate that. Also, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general. It would give us a big boost of confidence and would also let us know that you guys are enjoying the content, the discussion points, what we're talking about on the show, all of that good stuff, that the content that we are producing here at the GSMC Sports Podcast is what you guys are enjoying and what you guys would like to hear. So make sure just leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general on whatever podcasting website or application you are listening to this episode on. Again, just leave us a 5-star review or a positive review in general. Give us a boost of confidence and let us know that you guys are enjoying the content that we are putting out there for you. Finally, do not also forget to follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We would love to interact with you guys more on there as well. We could talk about sports, we could talk about the show, we could talk about really anything, but either way, we would love to interact with you guys more on social media, and where you can find us is Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Again, don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We have a fantastic show for you all today. Later on in the episode, at the very end, I will be giving you my game picks for today when you're listening to this NFL Sunday. Maybe you're listening after the NFL games, or maybe you're listening during the NFL games. I'm going to give you my prediction for each and every NFL game today. That's coming at the end of the episode, and boy, do we have some great games. Sunday night, which is tonight actually, we have Packers and Saints, and then Monday night there's also Chiefs and Ravens. I'll get into all of those games at the very end of the episode, as well as breaking down what happened in the Thursday night game between the Dolphins and the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Dolphins' big win there. Are the Dolphins' season still alive? Can they get back into it? And who's going to win the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes? We'll get into that stuff as well later on in the episode. And of course, we're going to also get into the Miami Heat, Boston Celtics game. What is it going to be? Game 6 is tonight when you're listening to this. I'll give you a breakdown of everything that happened Game 5. Can this series go 6 or 7? Can the Boston Celtics come back and make the NBA Finals? We'll get into that later on in the show as well. But of course, we're going to start off with the Los Angeles Lakers defeating the Denver Nuggets and advancing to the NBA Finals, being the first team to advance to the NBA Finals. They beat the Denver Nuggets last night, 117-107. The series is officially over. They have beaten the Denver Nuggets in 5 games. What an incredible run for Anthony Davis and LeBron James. LeBron James had 38, 16, and 10. That's 38 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists. Anthony Davis with 27, 5, and 3. One of those nights where the Denver Nuggets played well enough to win, I believe, except for maybe Murray. Jokic had 27 and 5. Jamal Murray had 19, 4, and 8. Morris had 10 off the bench. Michael Porter Jr. had 10 off the bench. Jeremy Grant had another 20-piece with 9 rebounds and an assist as well. And Paul Millsap with 13 and 4. But when LeBron James goes out there and gets 38, 16, and 10, and Anthony Davis gets 27 pretty much consistently a night, there's not much you can do if you're the Denver Nuggets. Now, the Lakers have officially made it back to NBA relevancy. They're back in the NBA Finals. LeBron James has made his 10th NBA Finals appearance. Would be, I believe, not 10 in a row, but it would be something crazy. If he had made it last year, it would have been something crazy like 7 in a row or something like that. Maybe even more. Obviously, I think it would have been 9 actually. LeBron James, obviously, back in the NBA Finals, where he belongs. The best player in the world, the most valuable player in the world, the face of the NBA, really as a whole, the leader of the NBA is LeBron James. Where LeBron goes, the NBA goes, as we all know, and he is back in the NBA Finals. I'll talk about who he could play potentially going forward, but I do want to talk about the Denver Nuggets as well, because where do the Denver Nuggets go from here? I mentioned this before. I said that the Denver Nuggets were playing with house money. They were playing with, exceeded expectations already, considering that their season's goal this year, honestly, from a realistic standpoint, was probably to make it to the second round. That's where everybody, including myself, had the Denver Nuggets as. Probably as a second-round team. Everybody kind of going into the season probably knew or thought that the Lakers and Clippers were the 2 best teams in the league. So as soon as the Nuggets actually beat the LA Clippers and made it to the Western Conference Finals, they had already exceeded expectations of their season. They had already, taken leaps and bounds that they weren't expecting. I don't know if they were expecting Jamal Murray to take that step from just a really good point guard in this league to probably a star point guard, maybe even superstar point guard. Nikola Jokic making the lead to becoming the best big man in the league, in my opinion. I love what Anthony Davis does on both ends of the floor. But I think what Nikola Jokic does for the Denver Nuggets offense, which is literally everything, I just think he does a little bit too much for his team, specifically on the offensive end of the floor. I don't know if any other center does that for their team. I think maybe Bam Adebayo of the Miami Heat does a similar type thing to Jokic with the passing and the running the offense through him, almost as a point center. But I don't think Bam does it to the level or the capability of Nikola Jokic, who literally, moves around and it kind of runs the offense like he is the point guard. Bam usually gets the ball on the elbow or on the block and makes a decision from there. Jokic can make a decision from the top of the key, the three-point line, underneath the hoop, anything. He'll make the decision to pass, shoot, whatever needs to be done for the team. And I do think that that's what sets Nikola Jokic apart from everything else. Also, the thing with Anthony Davis is that Anthony Davis is obviously a pure scorer and a very good defensive player as well. I just think I'd rather have Nikola Jokic as a whole, as an all-around player, over Anthony Davis, not to discredit anything Anthony Davis has done in this series. He's proved me wrong by stepping up big in fourth quarters, hitting the game winner, of course, and hitting his shots, and obviously back-to-back games was with absolutely incredible stats and numbers and everything like that. But I do think Nikola Jokic is still the best center in the game going forward. But if you're the Denver Nuggets, were you expecting to win a championship this year? Was this a busted season? I don't think so. I think if you're a Denver Nuggets fan, you have your head held up high. You had a great season. Everything that you wanted to accomplish was accomplished. And I think the Denver Nuggets might have put themselves on the map for future free agents, for future, picks, whatever it may be. People know who the Denver Nuggets are now, and people know the Denver Nuggets are a legitimate team. They made it to the Western Conference Finals. They have 2 legitimate stars in Murray and Jokic. They have a fantastic coach in Mike Malone. I think that's all been proven now to the entire NBA. As well as some fantastic young pieces. I really liked what I saw out of Jeremy Grant, and I really liked what I saw out of Michael Porter Jr. as well. And of course, there's Bobo coming down the pipeline. So if you're the Denver Nuggets, what I would do, at least if I were the Denver Nuggets general manager, is I wouldn't want to shake up this roster too much. I don't know if there's a guy that's out there that you could acquire to put over the hump, a guy like a Mitchell, a guy like a Beal, something like that. But a name that's really interesting to me for the Denver Nuggets to potentially go after is Victor Oladipo. Victor Oladipo is going to be a type of guy who's going to be on the market this year, I believe. While Mike D'Antoni and the Indiana Pacers might have some mutual interest, and I think the Pacers really want D'Antoni, I actually expect D'Antoni to be the next head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, and I'll probably talk about that a little bit in my next segment as well. I talked about it a little bit in my last episode. I think Victor Oladipo is going to be on the move. I don't think Indiana, an organization, a franchise that has been stubborn in the past to pay people in general, go after big free agents, pay their superstars, that supermax, that next level, make them that star player, make them that franchise guy. I could see Victor Oladipo seeking that money and also seeking just a better, maybe a better franchise, a better team, a higher percentage chance of winning. I could see him looking elsewhere for that. And I think the Denver Nuggets provide a really, really interesting option for that, because if they can give up somebody that isn't Michael Porter Jr. or Bol because I don't think, obviously, if Bradley Beal were to come available, or even if, Donovan Mitchell, we talked about earlier in the season, that's looking unlikely. But if a guy of that caliber became available, then sure, you'd have to throw in Michael Porter Jr. or Bol or one of your really young guys that you had, you were really high on in your draft pool, your draft prospects, in order to get that another superstar. But Victor Oladipo, I don't know if Victor Oladipo is going to cost you that. I think Victor Oladipo might be traded on the cheap. I think Indiana is also looking to contend and might just take some, Victor Oladipo for some depth. I could see that in a first-round pick or something like that. And I think, there's a lot of teams that could be interested in Oladipo, the Heat, the Nets, the Lakers. I think the Nuggets provide a really interesting option for Oladipo as well. If you can get him for some of your guys on your bench, Morris, a couple of other depth guys, and maybe a first-round pick or so, then you can run out a lineup of, Murray, Oladipo, and then you maybe get Michael Porter Jr., and then Jeremy Grant at the 4, and then, you could have Nikola Jokic at the 5. And that would be a really interesting option. For me, I think that could almost take them over the hump. Obviously, I don't know if Paul Millsap still fits in the picture with that team. I believe he's a free agent after this year. But getting a guy like Victor Oladipo, another scorer, because again, with these games that the Denver Nuggets won, it was a lot because of their scoring from Murray and from Jokic. And the offensive burden and the offensive load that Jokic and Murray have to carry is almost too much for any NBA player to handle. For them, in order for them to beat a team like the LA Lakers, or in order for them to beat a team like the LA Clippers like they did, you need Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray to get you like 35, maybe even for in Jamal Murray's case, 40 a night in order for you to be considered, like productive and effective on the game. And I don't know how long you can sustain that, especially after this year. There's a lot of tape on Murray and how well he played. Defenses are going to figure out ways to scheme Jamal Murray and make sure he doesn't get, those 40, 45 points a night. And when that happens, you need another guy that you can defer to. Not just Jokic, not just Murray. Jeremy Grant was stepping up in a couple games, getting 20 points. But I think a guy like Victor Oladipo, who could consistently give you 20 to 23 points a game, that would be huge for the Denver Nuggets. So if I'm Mike Malone, if I'm the Nuggets general manager, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for another guy. And also, Victor Oladipo isn't going to demand the ball out of Jamal Murray's hands like maybe Bradley Beal would, or maybe Donovan Mitchell would, some of these other, bona fide superstars. If you get, you throw Victor Oladipo, an unselfish, really good defensive player as well, on that, that 2 slot next to Murray, I think they would have a really good backcourt, and I think that backcourt would work. I don't think, they would have a trouble or an issue sharing the ball or anything like that. I think they, have a good system with that. And then I think you could also, when you have the rotations coming around, then you can send Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray to the bench, give them a well-deserved rest, and then Victor Oladipo can kind of run it with the bench unit despite being a starter. You throw 4 bench players out there and Oladipo, and then you let Oladipo do his thing with the ball in his hands, and then you could have a really good rotational system as well. If I'm Mike Malone, if I'm the Denver Nuggets general manager, I'm looking at Victor Oladipo as a potential guy. There was another interesting quote from Shaquille O'Neal, actually, in Inside the NBA after the game. He said he couldn't reveal his sources, but the Lakers would rather play the Heat than the Celtics in the NBA Finals. Now, this is interesting to me for a couple of reasons. One, we don't know exactly who said that, right? I don't think it was LeBron James. If I had to guess who said that, it could have been a guy like Dion Waiters who wants to go against his former team and prove them wrong on giving up on them. Because if you remember, I believe what did the Heat do? They just traded him after suspending him for, I think, about 15 games. He barely got any playing time with the Heat this season before being traded to the Grizzlies, who I believe then waived him, and then he was picked up by the LA Lakers. It could also be LeBron James. It could be anybody on this Lakers organization who would rather play the Heat than the Celtics. I disagree. I think that the Los Angeles Lakers would do better against a team that isn't as, more deep than them. I think the Lakers don't have a fantastic bench, and I don't think the Boston Celtics have a fantastic bench either. And I think both of those teams rely a lot on their starters, and their starters playing heavy minutes. So I think that's more of a better matchup than a Heat team that uses sometimes 10, 11 guys at some point, rotates you through, has a matchup for pretty much everything. I understand where they're coming from, that the Heat maybe don't have the offensive firepower, as obvious at least. They don't have the Tatum, Brown, Hayward, Smart, and Kemba, those 5. But what the Heat do have is they have a guy like Tyler Hero off the bench, Kelly Olynyk off the bench, Derrick Jones Jr. off the bench, Kendrick Nunn off the bench. Guys off the bench that are really going to do damage to these guys who are coming off the Laker bench. Guys like Deion Waiters, J.R. Smith, Quinn Cook as well. And the other factor for it all is if I'm the Los Angeles Lakers, I'd rather play the Celtics because of the Bam Adebayo effect as well. There's no big man in this league that can actually stop Anthony Davis night in, night out. But Bam Adebayo made life really difficult for Giannis Antetokounmpo, is making life really difficult for the Boston Celtics in general right now, including Jason Tatum. I think he'd make life really, really difficult for Anthony Davis. And I understand that you can't contain Anthony Davis, and Anthony Davis would definitely get still his 20 points probably. But what Bam Adebayo would do is it would make him tired by the end of the game. It would make it, just life harder in general. He would contest every shot, everything like that. And I think the Los Angeles Lakers want to avoid that. I think wouldn't the Lakers rather see Anthony Davis matched up against a guy like Daniel Tice than Bam Adebayo? I don't really understand where the LA Lakers are coming from on that standpoint. Who do I think they'll face in the finals? I do believe the Heat are going to finish it out tonight and win in 6 and advance, and I think we're going to get Heat Lakers in the NBA Finals. But who would I rather play? I mean, these two teams, the Heat and Celtics, are very evenly matched. They play different styles of basketball, but they're a very evenly matched team. I don't think either one. I think both the Heat and Celtics have a chance to upset the Los Angeles Lakers in the finals 100%. I'd give the Heat maybe a 1-game chance better, but nothing more than that. If I'm the Lakers, I'd rather play the Boston Celtics. I'd rather the Celtics come back and win in 7 and play them. And then the bench, both of those teams don't have great benches. That would be an even matchup. No answer for Anthony Davis for the Boston Celtics, so that can combat the fact that the Celtics don't really have an answer, the Lakers don't really have an answer for Kemba Walker. But with the Heat, you get everything. You get good point guard play in Goran Dragic. You have good big man play in Bam Adebayo. Great bench play from Tyler Hero. They kind of have everything. And sure, maybe the Heat aren't the flashiest team with all the superstars like Boston has. But if I'm the Lakers, I'm more scared of the Heat than I am of the Lakers. Not to mention just the mentality that the Miami Heat bring, that they're really not scared of anybody. They believe they're going to upset you and everything like that. I'd rather play the Boston Celtics than the Miami Heat. Let me know who you would rather play if you're the LA Lakers. And where do you guys think the Denver Nuggets should go from here? All right, we're going to take a short break. On the other side of the break, like I mentioned, the Miami Heat Boston Celtics Game 6 is tonight. Who do I have winning that game and why? As well as what happened in Game 5. What did the Celtics do to exploit the Miami Heat? We'll get into all that, as well as how to fix the Philadelphia 76ers. It's looking more and more like that it's Mike D'Antoni's job to lose. If Mike D'Antoni is hired, if I was Mike D'Antoni, what would I do to reorganize this roster and really make Philadelphia a contender in 1 year? We'll get into all that good stuff right after this short break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. We really do appreciate it here at the GSMC Sports Podcast team. I just finished talking about the Los Angeles Lakers advancing to the NBA Finals, finally getting that return to the championship level status, led, of course, by LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Frank Vogel, the coach. Outstanding season for the Lakers. Now they just have one more series to capture. What will it be? The Miami Heat or the Boston Celtics? That is what we still do not know. And that's what I want to talk about right now. So obviously, there was Game 4 of the series. I thought the Heat would close it out. They did not. The Celtics survived. They won 121 to 108. The Celtics had incredible games from Tatum and Brown. Tatum had 31. Brown had 28. Walker with 15. Smart with 12. And Gordon Hayward with 10 off the bench in 30 minutes of work. The Heat really couldn't get anything going all game. The only guy who really got stuff going for the Heat was Dragic with 23. Duncan Robinson also had 20. He actually finally got one of those games where he was shooting the lights out of the ball. Butler had 17. Hero had 14 off the bench. Crowder with 14 as well. Again, for the Celtics, 31 from Tatum. 31, 10, and 6, I should say, from Tatum. Brown had 29, 8, and 2. Daniel Tice actually 15 and 13. I forgot to mention him. He had a great game as well. And we're going into a Game 6 now, which is tonight. And I won't dwell too much on this previous game. Again, I think the Heat would have closed that one out if they didn't shoot 18% from the three-point line. Pretty much the only guy who could hit a three all night was Duncan Robinson, an occasional Hero three there and here and there. Again, 18% of the field for the Miami Heat. They were up at halftime, kind of let their foot off the gas. And the Celtics responded, obviously fighting for their season, still trying to get to the NBA Finals. Teams have come back down from 3-1 before. Teams less talented than the Boston Celtics have come back down 3-1 before. So I expect the Celtics to really believe that they can come back and win this series. As for Game 6 tonight, who do I like? You know, it's interesting. I like the Heat to finish it out in 6. Honestly, what really switched me from, thinking that this was going to be a 7, because honestly, after the immediate Celtics win, I was like, I bet this goes 7, is what I immediately thought. I immediately thought that the Celtics were going to win the next game, push it to 7, and Game 7, anything can happen. I would have gone with the Heat for my Game 7 pick, but it would have been a toss-up. But what Jimmy Butler said after the game was what really stuck out to me. After the game, he said that he just pretty much was super confident and said, we'll be ready for Sunday. And I don't know why, but after hearing that, I just think now that the Heat are going to win. I think that this team wants it too bad, and I think for that brief moment that we saw that they let their foot off the gas is what cost them in that second half. And again, there are a lot of things that happen to the Heat that I don't think are sustainable. I don't think they're going to shoot 18% from 3. They're probably the best three-point shooting team in the league. I don't think that'll continue through the next game. So I expect the Heat tonight to close it out and take it to, what will it be? It'll be game... Oh, no, that'll be it. They're up 3-2, so that would be it. This is Game 6. I expect the Heat to win that game and advance past the Boston Celtics. Now, if we're talking about a Heat-Lakers finals matchup, and who knows, maybe next episode, I'm talking about Game 7 between Celtics and the Miami Heat. But again, I just think that'll happen. Bam Adebayo did not play great. I know he's dealing with some sort of wrist/arm injury as well. The Heat as an organization, and really a lot of basketball teams, once you get to this stage, will conceal injuries and not give you the full story. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if no matter what happens for the rest of the season, Bam Adebayo has an incredible couple games right here and there, and then they get into the NBA Finals, and let's say they lose to the LA Lakers. Wouldn't surprise me if the days after the NBA Finals end that Bam Adebayo needs a minor wrist surgery or has a minor injury, and they tell him, Bam played through this, and this, and LeBron played through this, and this. At this point, it's almost like the NFL. Nobody's really 100%. Everybody's tired. Everybody's either cramping, hurt, all this stuff. I think Bam Adebayo is dealing with a legitimate, wrist/arm injury, and he put the loss all on himself, too. He thought that he should have played better. I expect Bam to bounce back. I don't think the Heat want this to go to a Game 7. The Heat are the hungriest team in the league, in my opinion. No team plays hungrier than the Heat. No team plays more like a team than the Miami Heat. The way they just defer, and everybody... The thing is with the Miami Heat is everybody has the green light. Everybody can shoot, right? When you see the Lakers, everybody kind of winces when certain guys shoot. When Kuzma does that step back there, everybody winces. For the Miami Heat, everybody's confident in each other that they're willing to pass up their maybe semi-open looks to get the wide-open look. Tyler Hero is willing to pass up a contested 3 to a wide-open 3 to Jay Crowder, or even just a good shot to get a great shot. And that's what the Heat do, and sometimes to a fault. And I thought that's what I saw last game in Game 5. I saw a lot of overpassing for the Heat. I saw a lot of guys passing up really, really good shots. Jay Crowder would then miss a wide-open 3, right? And And when you're shooting 18% from the three-point line and you do this overpassing, you don't get those paint shots, and Jimmy Butler doesn't get to the free throw line like he likes to do, and Goran Dragic fouls out early, Bam and Butler were having foul trouble all night as well as Hero. It was just an overall bad game for the Miami Heat, specifically in the second half. And even then they kept cutting it to 8, to 6, and then the Celtics would respond. So I like the Heat in Game 6 to really close this series out and advance to the NBA Finals. And I think we'll get, what'll be? When will this series start? I think if the Miami Heat win tonight, I think we'll get Game 1 of the NBA Finals on Tuesday. I think would be the call. Maybe even maybe Wednesday. Maybe closer to Wednesday. Tuesday or Wednesday, I think would be Game 1 of the NBA Finals between Heat and Lakers. I like that series. I think that's what's going to happen. I expect the Miami Heat to close this out in 6. Again, who do I like in that series? Here's the thing with the Miami Heat. They're not... Paul Pierce had an interesting quote where he said that this league is scared to play LeBron James, which I don't know if I entirely agree with. Wouldn't surprise me at all if there's a lot of young guys who are intimidated by LeBron James, and there's a lot of guys who have maybe gotten beaten by LeBron James before, intimidated by LeBron James. If you remember the Raptors, I think the Raptors were always scared of LeBron. Some other teams as well. I don't think the Miami Heat are one of those teams. If that statement is true, I don't think the Miami Heat are one of those teams. The Miami Heat are not scared of anybody. They weren't scared of the Bucks. They weren't scared of the Pacers. They're not scared of the Celtics right now. I think they wouldn't be scared of the LA Lakers either. Not to mention there's a lot of extra motivation in this series. A lot of guys for the Heat didn't play with LeBron during the Heatles era, except for Udonis Haslem, obviously. But there's still just some tension. You play for the Heat, that's LeBron's former team, you want to beat LeBron. I know for a fact Pat Riley wants to annihilate LeBron James. There's still some bad blood there as well. Heat, Lakers, Pat Riley has history with the Lakers as well as LeBron James. So it's really interesting to see that whole narrative as well. I think the Heat, what they're going to do is be really physical with the LA Lakers, assuming they win tonight. I think they're going to be really physical with them, and I think Bam is going to have a good series against Anthony Davis. That's the way that the Heat are going to try to work. The Heat are going to try to operate. Who do I like in that series? It's close. I think it'd go 6 or 7. I'd probably lean a little bit towards the Lakers because of the LeBron James factor. And while LeBron James is averaging right now, I don't know what he's averaging, but last game he had 38, 16, and 10. With who was guarding him, I'm assuming. Maybe Michael Porter Jr., Jeremy Grant as well. But Jimmy Butler will get those minutes on LeBron. I think Jay Crowder would get a lot of minutes on LeBron as well, and Derrick Jones Jr. Obviously, Andre Iguodala would get a lot of minutes on LeBron James in the NBA Finals as well. He would get brought in off the bench. I just don't think you can stop LeBron James. LeBron James wants his 4th championship. It'll be his 4th championship with his 3rd different team. He'll have won one with the big city, Miami. He'll have won one with the Cleveland Cavaliers, his hometown. And then, of course, with the biggest brand maybe in all of sports besides, the Dallas. Who are the biggest brands in sports? I think the Lakers, Cowboys, and Yankees are probably the 3 biggest brands in sports. Let me know what you think about that. But that would be huge for LeBron's legacy. This would be the year to do it. The Clippers were knocked out. The Heat are the surprise team of the East, so there's no Milwaukee Bucks either, maybe even no Boston Celtics. Maybe that's the reason why the LA Lakers want to play the Miami Heat. Again, if I were the Lakers, I wouldn't want to see the Heat. Heat are a dangerous team. They're playing with house money. They're playing with a ridiculous amount of confidence. And I think that confidence really showed in that postgame that I was talking about with Jimmy Butler, where they just lost the Celtics. All these rumors, are you going to blow the 3-1 lead? Blah, blah, yada, yada, this, yada, yada, that. And he just said, we'll be ready for Sunday, Game 6. And I think the Heat will close this one out and take that series lead, or take that really series lead for good. Win the series 4-2. Hard-fought series between the Heat and Celtics. It was a great series. I think it'll end tonight. I think the Heat win the game in 6. I want to talk about, or let me know what you think about that. I want to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers because there is a report coming out today that the 76ers' job is essentially Mike D'Antoni's to lose. The team is willing to completely, trade the roster, blow up the roster to try to fix and make Philly a contender immediately with Mike D'Antoni. So I'm expecting full on now that Mike D'Antoni is going to be the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. And the first thing that they said that they would do before trading the roster as well is moving Tobias Harris back to his natural power forward position. This is interesting to me. So I'm trying to figure out the exact direction that Philadelphia is going. Who are they going to trade and all that good stuff? Because I think when you go into this roster, so let's say Mike D'Antoni is hired by the Philadelphia 76ers, like I think we all are expecting at this point. Will he break up Simmons and Embiid? I think he's going to, and I think they're going to lean towards getting rid of, it's close. I don't know. See, I'm trying to predict almost what Mike D'Antoni's doing, and I think Tobias Harris is untradeable. I don't know if they're actually going to be able to move off of his contract. I understand that maybe Tobias Harris has better statistics than Al Horford, but I think Al Horford is more movable based off of his veteran experience, his shooting, and more teams I think need a solid big man than they need a 3 or 4 in Tobias Harris. So let's say they move off of Al Horford, ship him to a team like, let's say, Sacramento for shooters like, maybe they could get in. I don't know if you can get Buddy Hield for Al Horford. See, that's the tough thing. You could maybe something like that. It's interesting. But let's say, if I'm Philadelphia, what would I do? I don't know if Mike D'Antoni wants to eliminate Ben Simmons or trade Ben Simmons because he can't shoot and he doesn't fit his system. Or are they going to try and keep Ben Simmons and surround him with shooters? I'm assuming right now that Mike D'Antoni is probably going to move off of Ben Simmons because I think Joel Embiid is the face of the franchise in Philadelphia. And I think while Ben Simmons is a younger player, more developmental piece, I think Mike D'Antoni wants to win and he wants to win now. And I think Ben Simmons could get you more of what you're looking for from a lot more different teams. I think more teams would be interested in Simmons than Embiid because a lot of teams have centers already. And Embiid only fits a certain style of games and also the contract that Embiid has, everything like that. There's that trade from Cleveland that's, what is it? It's like Garland and Sexton and some other guys, some other shooters as well. Garland, Sexton, Kevin Porter Jr., if you can get him, KPJ, he's really good. I'd like to see KPJ and and Garland on Philadelphia with Embiid, and if you could throw in Horford to a team like Sacramento and get a guy back maybe like Buddy Hield or Bjelic, somebody get some shooting back from Sacramento, because I know Al Horford, or the Sacramento Kings were really interested in Al Horford as a potential big man. I could see Sacramento landing Al Horford, giving some shooters back to Philadelphia, then trading Simmons to Cleveland, getting some shooters and some really nice young pieces back from then as well. Another route you could go is trading Joel Embiid to a team like Chicago, or a team like, maybe if you send Embiid to Sacramento, you could get Buddy Hield, you could get Marvin Bagley, you could get some Buddy Hield would be the prize piece. If you could run out and keep Simmons and have Buddy Hield kind of play the 2, then Simmons could really just be driving and kicking to shooters. You hang on to Al Horford as he's a stretch big and he can shoot the 3 relatively well. That could be an interesting standpoint too. But I don't think there's a way Mike D'Antoni gets hired and they keep both Simmons and Embiid. That just doesn't fit the system that Mike D'Antoni is going to want to run. I don't think it'll be the exact same system that he ran in Houston. I don't think you're going to find an ISO player like that to be able to do that. But I do think it's going to be still that system of we're taking a 3 or we're taking a layup. No mid-range crap, none of that. And I think Ben Simmons with the drive and kick game would work in that system. I also think that the Joel Embiid, surround him with shooters would work in that system as well. So either way Mike D'Antoni wants to go, I think it would work. I think it's just a matter of when and not if Mike D'Antoni's hired by Philadelphia and that roster gets a major, major makeover. Let me know what you would do if you were the leaders of the Philadelphia 76ers. How would you reshape the team, reshape the organization in order to get to contenders sooner rather than later? All right, we're going to take another short break. On the other side of this break, I want to break down everything that happened in the Thursday night game between the Miami Dolphins and the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we'll also hit up some topics as well, discussing maybe a little bit of college football. There's some guys who have been really impressing me, specifically for at the quarterback position. Also, who's going to win the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. We'll get into all that good stuff right after this short break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast. brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. We really do appreciate it here at the GSMC Sports Podcast team. Again, if you want to subscribe to the podcast, do all that stuff I said at the beginning of the episode, we would really, really appreciate it. I just finished talking about the Eastern Conference Finals between the Heat and Celtics. I think the Heat will close it out tonight in Game 6, and I do think we will get Heat-Lakers NBA Finals. Let me know what you think about that potential matchup as well. And as well as how would you fix the Philadelphia 76ers? I'm assuming Mike D'Antoni is going to go get the job and probably reboot this roster and probably change a lot of things. And, you know, again, the Simmons and Embiid thing, I think it's officially over. I don't think that works in Philadelphia. I don't think that works with Mike D'Antoni. I don't think he's even going to try it. I think he's probably seen enough. I think maybe even Elton Brand, the general manager, has maybe seen enough as well. It looks like he's going to be staying for the long term. Will they go with Simmons or Embiid? See, that's a toss-up. If I were them personally, I think the Simmons surrounded by shooters part would work a little bit more and definitely give you a little bit more of a future versus Embiid doing that, only because Simmons is younger and you're paying Embiid or you're paying Simmons less as well. I think maybe Embiid can get you more on the market immediately because a lot of people probably have some questions about Ben Simmons still, but it wouldn't surprise me if Mike D'Antoni would rather hang on to Embiid because he might fit the system more than Ben Simmons does. I'm not exactly sure. It's up to them, obviously. I want to switch gears now to the Thursday night game between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Miami Dolphins that happened a couple days ago. Really, really fun game, honestly. It was back and forth for a little bit. The Dolphins were really in control from start to finish, though. 31-13, the Miami Dolphins win. Ryan Fitzpatrick was Fitzmagic. Usually what happens with Ryan Fitzpatrick is once the chatter gets really loud, put the young kid in, put Tua Tagovailoa in, do all this, do this, then that. We're sick of Fitzpatrick, yada, yada this, yada, yada that. He does Fitzmagic type stuff. 18 of 20, 160 yards and 2 touchdowns, no picks. Incredible game from him. Myles Gaskin was phenomenal as well in the round game, 66 yards off the ground. Devontae Parker had 70 yards in the receiving aspect, and Mike Gesicki got another touchdown. That's 7 touchdowns for tight end Mike Gesicki in the last 12 games going back to last year. That's more than any other tight end in the league, more than Kelsey, more than Kittle. So he's somebody to watch. He's somebody to watch. Mike Gesicki is an emerging star in this league. He might be the Dolphins' best offensive player in a few years, besides maybe Tua Tagovailoa. And when Tua does get inserted, this offense looks fun. Chan Gailey, who came out of retirement for to obviously be the offensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. I think he was with the Jets last. His offense did not look good week 1 against New England. I think they only got, 11 points, something like that. Then week 2, it looks really good, and they get 28 on Buffalo. Then week 3, on a short week, it's 31 against Jacksonville. This Dolphins offense is better than the Dolphins defense, which is interesting because the Dolphins spent all that money getting guys like Byron Jones, Kyle Van Noy, Emmanuel Ogbah, Shaq Lawson, all of these guys, as well as draft picks, Raekwon Davis, Noah Iganagami, really revamping this defense. And I really thought this Miami Dolphins team wanted to be a defense-first team. I still think they want to do that. The defense has been the one struggling, not the offense. Obviously, everything really worked on Thursday night. As in when we're going to see Tua Tagovailoa, this is the interesting thing that everybody was talking about, because obviously everybody wanted Tua to start pretty much as soon as, Ryan Fitzpatrick lost that first week, and then obviously that second week as well. So now that he's won the Thursday night game, he's obviously not going to, be benched for week 4 against the Seattle Seahawks. But here's an interesting proposition in what I'm doing if I'm Brian Flores here, right? So you got the Fitzmagic game that everybody wanted to see, maybe at least the fans did, right? And you validated yourself. What Ryan Fitzpatrick did against Jacksonville, and also what he did against Buffalo, validated the fact that Tua Tagovailoa didn't start week 1. Obviously, the Dolphins did not lose week 2 because of Ryan Fitzpatrick's play. I think they lost week 1 because of Ryan Fitzpatrick's play. They did not lose week 2 because of Ryan Fitzpatrick's play, and I think they won week 3 because of Ryan Fitzpatrick and how well he played. So just because of that one game alone, and also the Buffalo game, if you want to count it, it has been validated, and everybody can say that was the right decision to play him over Tua Tagovailoa at the beginning part of the year while Tua was still learning and arguably still healing from that hip injury. But this really tough slot of games that looked really tough at the beginning of the year for the Miami Dolphins is not so tough anymore. And I'll explain because of injuries why. So obviously they play Seattle, not today, a week from today. Ryan Fitzpatrick will be starting that game. I think the Seattle Seahawks will win big, and I think Ryan Fitzpatrick will not have a very good game, multiple interceptions. Then your 1-3 is the Miami Dolphins with these next 3 games: San Francisco, Denver, and the Chargers. Now, here's the interesting thing here. Now, at the beginning of the year, I would have told you no chance in hell you should start Tua Tagovailoa his first game going against San Francisco or really the Denver Broncos. I thought the Denver Broncos would be the surprise team of the year, be a big pop team. I thought Drew Lock would be incredible. And San Francisco is obviously incredible, defending NFC champions. Nick Bosa, all that stuff. Now, Nick Bosa's injured. He's not playing. He's done for the year. Raheem Mostert is injured. He's not playing in this game either. A ton of other injuries for San Francisco. And I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to make it back in time to play against this Dolphin game. I think Jimmy Garoppolo will miss at least 2 games from that ankle injury. So now, you're looking at San Francisco without Jimmy Garoppolo, led by Nick Mullins. I could see Tua Tagovailoa starting in there after losing to Seattle, going 1-3, and then Denver's, you already know, is not going to play with Drew Lock. They're going to play with either Bortles or with Jeff Driscoll. And then you have the Chargers probably with Justin Herbert over Tyrod Taylor, and then the Rams, and then the Cardinals, and then the Jets back to back. So now, though, that 3-game stretch of the 49ers, the Broncos, and the Chargers is not as hard as people believe. So I expect Tua Tagovailoa to maybe get that first game against San Francisco, a really depleted San Francisco team, or maybe against the Chargers. I could see that happening, considering that's a home game. Do you want his first game at home, away, that type of stuff? The latest I believe we see Tua Tagovailoa is, I believe, what will that be? We're going into week 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Week 10, they play the New York Jets. That's the latest Tua Tagovailoa will play. I think Tua will play earlier than that. I think he actually, if I had to predict, I think he might get his first start against the Los Angeles Chargers at home on the 25th of October. That's where I'm looking at right now. The earliest I see him playing is obviously that game against San Francisco 2 weeks from today. But I'm going to, just as a realistic option, I could see him playing against the Chargers at home for that first game, going against Justin Herbert probably if Tyrod Taylor's not fit to go, or if they just turn the keys over to Justin Herbert right away. I could see that happening. Let me know what you guys think about that. As for a little bit of college football, and really the college football quarterbacks, there was a couple of guys who are actually incredible. Obviously, the SEC returned, and there was some incredible games, some incredible upsets, stuff that I couldn't even tell you or couldn't even really believe when I saw it. I'll read a couple of those results. I'm not going to go, all in on college football or anything, but what I am going to talk about a little bit is some of the quarterback play of those college football quarterbacks, specifically guys who could be looking to get into the NFL. Oklahoma lost to Kansas State 38-35. Spencer Rattler, who I'm very high on. I thought Spencer Rattler was an incredible quarterback prospect coming out of Arizona. Obviously at Oklahoma now. He had a great game from a statistical, you could say. He threw 30 of 41, 387 yards, and 4 touchdowns, but he threw 3 picks. And that is really the reason why Oklahoma lost the game. Too many turnovers for Spencer Rattler. Their season might be over before it even began. Texas had an incredible game against Texas Tech and went into overtime. Texas won 63-56. There was a lot of other games as well. LSU obviously losing an absolute crazy blowout. Not a blowout, but just a surprise loss, you could say. That was absolutely crazy to see LSU not win that game. Just a ton of awesome results all around the entire college football spectrum, really. And Alabama got it done 38-19. Georgia got it done 37-10. But really the big loss was the LSU game. And obviously Auburn beat Kentucky, which was interesting to see. And Florida beat Ole Miss 51-35. But Lane Kiffin in his first game as the Ole Miss head coach, the offense looked pretty good. I can't lie to you. The offense looked really good. Ole Miss might win a lot of games this year. I just don't think they're at Florida's level. For Florida, I think what Kyle Trask, what he did, he's a fifth-year senior. Kyle Trask has the chance to be the guy that blows up and takes it to the next level. There's 2 quarterbacks I want to talk about. Because every year in college football, and this has to do also with the NFL and the NFL draft, every year when we go into a draft class, right, there's always the guy who has all the tools that everybody knows is going to be a top 10 pick, but he gets over-scrutinized, gets picked apart, for little things, right? Every year that happens. In a lot of cases, last year it was Justin Herbert who had all the tools. No reason for you to believe that he wasn't a franchise quarterback, but he gets picked apart. They gotta, they got to criticize somebody. And then there's obviously the guy that's spectacular that everybody loves, that there's the debate if they should be the first overall pick or not. That was Tua Tagovailoa. And then there's obviously the surprise guy that comes out of nowhere and takes the number 1 spot, potentially a number 2 spot, and that is Joe Burrow. So this year's quarterback class is interesting because you're going to have Justin Fields, who's incredible, and he'll get his shot with Ohio State when they resume play. You have Trevor Lawrence, who's the greatest quarterback prospect I think I've ever seen. I think he's the second coming of John Elway. And then you have kind of blanks, right? You have Trey Lance, who's going to be that sort of project Josh Allen developmental type quarterback who will go, everyone will say won't go to the end of the first round, but on draft night he'll go top 10 to some team or top 15. And then there's sort of an up for grabs of who is quarterbacks 4 and quarterbacks 5. Because I think there's 2 guys now that could have the real chance at going into the first round and maybe even beyond, winning the Heisman, things like that. Kyle Trask is one of them. He's a 5th-year senior for the Florida Gators. I don't know if he transferred. He might have. I watched him last night and I saw Josh Allen. That's what I saw. I saw a more accurate version of Josh Allen. I saw Justin Herbert. I saw shades of Cam Newton from him. He was absolutely incredible. Had a fantastic game. 30 of 42, 416 yards, 6 touchdowns, no picks. That's legitimate, folks. And he's the type of guy now that is on my watch as a potential Heisman winner. Florida's probably going to move into top 3 in the entire college football programming now in the rankings now that LSU has lost. And he has a real chance to win the Heisman. Again, I saw him and I saw, Josh Allen. What Josh Allen looked against the Miami Dolphins week 2, like Josh Allen on his best day, that's what Kyle Trask looked like. He looked incredible. Also, Kyle Pitts, best tight end in the country, without a doubt in my mind. He will be a top 10 pick. Kyle Pitts, when I watched him, I saw Darren Waller. I saw an uber athletic tight end, one that was pretty much a wide receiver in a tight end's body, a guy that could high point the ball, ultimate mismatch everywhere on the field, faster than linebackers, faster than safeties, as well as being bigger, faster, and stronger than linebackers and safeties as well. Look out for him to be a top 10 pick. Kyle Pitts was incredible. Had, 4 touchdowns in the game? Some ridiculous type stuff like that. Yeah, 4 receiving touchdowns, 8 receptions, 170 yards, and 4 touchdowns for him. Best tight end in the country, without a doubt. Mississippi State's quarterback, KJ Costello. He is also on my radar, not as a guy who could go into the first round and steal the Heisman Trophy and pull a Joe Burrow or anything like that. I think Kyle Trask has a better chance of doing that. But KJ Costello, transfer from Stanford, owing to Mississippi State in the Mike Leach system now. Remember, Mike Leach is the Mississippi State head coach. 36 of 60, 623 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's the type of stuff that'll get you in the NFL. And obviously, Mike Leach quarterbacks have had success in the NFL. You look at Gardner Minshew. Guys who have worked with Mike Leach get drafted because they show off their arm talent. They throw for 65, 70 times a game. So I could really, really, really see Mike Leach getting a guy like KJ Costello into the NFL. Not in the first round, maybe in the second or third round, but a type of guy with a big arm, can sling it around a little bit, gunslinger type mentality, that could be attractive to NFL teams. The other guy now that I think has the chance to win the Heisman and go all the way this year, potentially win a national championship and go all the way and become a top 3, maybe even the first overall pick in the draft, besides Kyle Trask, Dietrich King, the quarterback for the Miami Hurricanes. He's incredible. I do want to talk about the U a little bit because the U has beaten Florida State. They're 3-0 now. They're going to move into the top 10 in the NCAA rankings, maybe even top 8, maybe even top 5. They beat FSU 52-10. Dietrich King now is, 2-0 as the Miami Hurricanes quarterback, or is it 3-0 now? What are they? Are they 3-0 or 2-0? How many games? It's so weird with the conferences. They're 2-0. Dietrich King had a game 29 of 40, 267 yards, 2 touchdowns, was absolutely incredible. He also ran for 65 yards on the ground. He's the dual threat Lamar Jackson type of guy that could get you, into the playoffs, college football that is, and could really shoot up. When I watch him, I see a little bit of a combination of Lamar Jackson and Marcus Mariota, where he isn't as fast as Lamar Jackson. His running style is more similar to Marcus Mariota in that, if you remember him in college. And I think he's a little bit of a better passer than Lamar Jackson was in college. Lamar Jackson has obviously made leaps and bounds in the NFL and become a really good passer there. But in college, I think Dietrich King, gets the ball out a little bit quicker and has more of that flick of the wrist, that snap. So Dietrich King and Kyle Trask are 2 guys who I can think could win the Heisman and make themselves all the way up into this, maybe even the second quarterback taken. I understand Joe, I keep comparing it to Joe Burrow, who obviously went up all the way to the number 1 overall pick. I don't think anybody can do anything to convince another NFL team to not take Trevor Lawrence number 1 overall. I think he's going number 1 overall. That's just how I see it personally. I think a guy like Kyle Trask or Dietrich King can convince a team to take them over Justin Fields, but even then that's going to be tough. But I think Dietrich King and Kyle Trask could make a legitimate argument as QB3, maybe even QB2 with a Heisman Trophy victory if Florida or Miami go all the way. If Dietrich King, like it looks like, is bringing that U brand back, the University of Miami football appears to be back right now, that carries some weight as well. The swagger that the U plays with, the clicks that the U gets, the stardom that the U brings. Dietrich King could be a type of guy that I see, specifically in this mobile quarterback league, where I'm like, wow, that guy could play at the next level. I mean, seriously, when you watch Dietrich King, I mean, think of Lamar Jackson, think of Marcus Mariota, think of Kyler Murray is another guy that I see a lot in Dietrich King. That works in the NFL now. Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray legitimately work in the NFL now, and I honestly, you can make the argument Marcus Mariota would too if he had the right system and the right coach and the right chance. Dietrich King could be another guy where you could see, like, wow, he had a fantastic year after transferring out of Houston. Let's see what he does at the next level in the NFL. Some coach will want to coach that. A team like the Raiders really intrigues me as a guy who could be interested in Dietrich King. I understand they're, 3-0 right now, or 2-0. They're probably going to lose to New England today. That's what I think, at least. I'll get into that in my next segment. But I could see a team like the Raiders being interested in a guy like Dietrich King. Let me know what you think about the crazy college football weekend we had and the Thursday night game between the Dolphins and the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, we're going to take one final break. On the other side of this final break, I'll be predicting each and every NFL game, who I think will win and why. It'll be a great segment. We'll get into all that good stuff right after this short break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Mesfer. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We really do appreciate it here at the GSMC Sports Podcast team. I just finished talking about the crazy Thursday night game between Ryan Fitzmagic and Gardner Minshew. Dolphins obviously won 31-13. As well as I also talked about the crazy college football weekend. LSU losing, some other big-name programs losing, some guys like KJ Costello making a name for themselves. Mike Leach's debut with Mississippi State was incredible. Dietrich King of the Hurricanes really bringing the U back. I think we can officially say now that the U is back. I think 2 Saturdays from now, not next Saturday, but the Saturday after, we have Clemson, Miami. That's going to be an incredible game to watch. Alabama obviously got it done as well. Just a fantastic weekend for college football overall. Glad to see all the conferences that are coming back. Pac-12 and I believe Big Ten are both coming back at some point, either in October or in November. So college football will be in full swing at some point, so that's going to be a lot of fun. For this segment, I want to predict each and every NFL game, who I have winning and why. I have a winning record in predictions since I've been talking about them on the show by a pretty good margin right now. I don't know the exact math. I have it somewhere in my head, but I will do it, and I will tell you guys all next episode. But let's just get right into it. Each and every game, who do I think will win and why? It'll be great stuff. Let's get right into it. Here we go. First game, Bears-Falcons. For whatever reason, the Falcons are favored to win this game. Not really sure why. I'm a big believer in the Bears right now. Mitch Trubisky's having a pretty good season so far, folks. 5 touchdowns to 2 picks this year. Good stuff. Again, this Atlanta Falcons team is not good. No Julio either. He is not playing. So if you want to consider this an upset, despite Chicago being 2-0, they are not favored to win this game. I like the Chicago Bears to win this game by at least a field goal. over the Atlanta Falcons. So that's one upset I already have. There's a couple of upsets I have this week. Next up, Rams at Bills. Both teams 2-0. I think it'll be a fantastic game. I'm a big believer in Sean McVay, man. And if the Dolphins can put 28 points on this Buffalo Bills defense, I think the Rams will do a lot more than that. I like the Rams to win this game. Close one by a field goal, but I think it'll be a big dramatic ending. I like the Rams to win this game by a field goal. Rams will advance to 3-0. That's how I see it happening. Let me know what you think. I think Rams over Bills in another upset. Then we have Washington versus Cleveland. I think this game will be closer than people think, just because I don't trust Cleveland, but I do think the Browns will get the victory and get it done. I expect the Browns to win this game and beat the Washington football team pretty handily. They're favored by a touchdown. That's probably what I would take them as. I wouldn't take them more than that. I think it'll be a one-score win for Cleveland. I like the Cleveland Browns by a touchdown. Then we have Titans-Vikings. Close game, but I like the Titans by at least a field goal here. Minnesota Vikings coming off a bad loss. I think Kirk Cousins will rebound and have a better game. But Tennessee's defense is really good. And I don't know if Minnesota Vikings, their defense can handle Derrick Henry and all that. I like the Titans to beat the Vikings. Then we have Raiders-Patriots. The Patriots are 1-1, Raiders are 2-0, but the Patriots are favored. I think that's for a good reason. I think the Raiders finally get a loss, drop to 2-1 after a New England Patriots victory. I think the Patriots win by at least a field goal, if not more. I think it'll be a great game, but I like the Patriots over the Las Vegas Raiders. Then we have Giants and 49ers. This is going to be an interesting game. Obviously, no Saquon Barkley and no Jimmy Garoppolo. I think it'll be a really close game, honestly, because everyone is so riddled with injuries. But I'm going to have to give it to the San Francisco 49ers. I think they'll win the game by a field goal in a very bad game, but I think they will win it and get that victory to go. Then we have the Jets and Colts. It shouldn't be a surprise. I think the Jets are the worst team in the league. I think the Colts win by at least a touchdown, if not more. What else can I say? Justin Herbert's second game ever. It will be going against the Carolina Panthers. I like the Chargers to beat the Panthers. I think Justin Herbert gets his first victory as the starting quarterback of the LA Chargers. I like the Panthers. I like the Chargers over the Panthers by a field goal. Then we have Cardinals-Lions. I think the Cardinals will handle the Lions like they did last year. Kyler Murray going for MVP. I think they'll advance to 3-0. Cardinals do not have a very hard schedule. I like the Cardinals to beat the Lions. Let me know what you think about that. Then we have the Buccaneers versus the Broncos. I was really looking forward to this game, but no Drew Lock for the Broncos, meaning I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to pretty handily handle the Denver Broncos. I think they win by at least a touchdown. Then we have Seahawks-Cowboys. I think it'll be the game of the week. I think it is the game of the week besides, obviously, Monday night. I think it'll be a fantastic game. I like the Seahawks to beat the Dallas Cowboys by a field goal. Then we have Packers-Saints tonight, another fantastic game. I think the Packers will come in with the upset. I think Drew Brees' arm is shot, and I think Aaron Rodgers is going for MVP. I think the Packers advance to 3-0, give the Saints a loss. I like the Packers by a field goal, so that's another upset. And then, of course, we have the famous Monday night game between the Chiefs and the Ravens. I think the Chiefs win by a field goal, but that's a toss-up game. Let me know what you think about my NFL picks for Week 3. A lot of upsets this week, but I think some of the highlights. I like the Rams to beat Buffalo, and I like the Bengals to beat Philadelphia. I didn't mention that, did I? I think the Bengals are going to beat Philadelphia. I think Joe Burrow will get his first ever win as the quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals. Can't wait to see what he does. I think they win that game. As well as some of the other games, I think that Houston will lose to Pittsburgh. I like Pittsburgh over Houston. And I think that's all of the games. I think I've gotten them to all. Let me know what you think about my game picks for Week 3. Hopefully next episode I'm telling you that I was right on all of them. All right, that is going to do it for today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Again, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a 5-star review, and follow us on all social media platforms. We would really appreciate if you did all of that good stuff. Again, I have been your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode, and I will see you all in the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.